There's a specific thing that happens before something you care about. It could be a conversation you need to have, a result you're waiting on, something that hasn't gone wrong yet, and your brain is already in the version where it has. Not because you chose to go there, not because you're being pessimistic or irrational or dramatic. Before you made any decision at all, the scenario was already running. The ending was already loaded. And the part that nobody really explains, the part that makes this so exhausting, is that you can see it happening and still not be able to stop it. You can watch your brain build the disaster in real time and be completely unable to close the construction site. This video is about why that happens, not the reassuring version, the actual version. Because once you understand what your brain is actually doing when it goes there, the going there changes, not immediately, but in a way that matters. Here's what most people notice first. It's not random. The worst-case scenarios don't visit every corner of life equally. They have preferences. They cluster around the things that matter most: relationships, performance, health, the future, and the places where it feels most uncertain. If someone doesn't text back in the time your brain has decided is normal, it doesn't generate the scenario where they're busy. It generates the one where something is wrong, where you said something, where the dynamic has shifted and you haven't been told yet. If there's a meeting tomorrow that carries any weight at all, it doesn't rehearse the version where it goes fine. It rehearses the version where it doesn't. And then the version after that, where the consequences of it not going fine are playing out. Anyone who's been in this knows the specific quality of that particular loop. It's not worry exactly, it's closer to preparation. As if running the worst version in advance is somehow protecting you from it. And here's the thing that makes this so hard to talk about. It works. Sometimes. Sometimes the preparation catches something real. Sometimes the pre-run disaster scenario is actually useful, which means the brain has very good reasons not to stop doing it. The other thing people notice, and this is important, is that the catastrophizing doesn't just run forward, it runs backward too. The post-conversation replay. The moment from 3 days ago that your brain is still litigating. The thing you said, the expression that shifted, the pause that lasted a beat too long. Pre-play and replay. Future disasters and past ones. Same mechanism, different direction. That's not a coincidence. And it's not a personality quirk. It's the same system running the same function, just aimed at different parts of the timeline. Let's go one level deeper. Most people who've read anything about anxiety have encountered some version of the negativity bias explanation. The idea that the brain evolved to notice threats more than safety. That it's a survival feature from a time when threats were physical and immediate. That's true as far as it goes, but it doesn't go far enough to actually explain what's happening. And it doesn't go far enough to change your relationship to it. So here's the version that goes further. Your brain is not just a threat detector, it's a prediction engine. And that distinction changes everything. A smoke detector responds to what's there. A prediction engine generates what it expects to be there before it arrives based on everything it has learned so far. Research in neuroscience increasingly suggests that the brain doesn't just passively receive the world and react to it. It is constantly generating predictions about what's coming, and then comparing those predictions to incoming information. The technical framing is predictive processing, and while the science is still developing, one pattern keeps appearing. The brain defaults to the prediction that has historically been most useful. So when your brain generates a worst-case scenario, it isn't being irrational. It is being extremely rational, based on the data it has. The problem isn't that the system is broken. The problem is the data the system is running on. Your threat detection system learned, over time, through experience, what the most likely outcomes were in high-stakes situations. It learned what happened when something felt uncertain. It learned what the cost of being wrong looked like. And it built a model. And now, every time a situation pattern matches to something in that model, the system generates the prediction the model says is most likely. Automatically, below the level of conscious choice, before you've decided to think about it at all. That's what automatically actually means. Not a failure of control. A function running below the level where control operates. Anyone who's been in this knows the specific frustration of trying to control something that isn't happening in the controllable layer. That's not weakness. That's a category error. And it's the reason willpower doesn't reach it. Here's the part that almost never gets said out loud. Your threat detection system didn't arrive miscalibrated. It calibrated to something real, in a specific context, at a specific time in your life. For most people who live with this kind of chronic worst-case generation, there was a period, often early, sometimes later, when uncertainty genuinely did tend to resolve badly. When the thing you feared actually happened often enough that preparing for it made sense. When the vigilance paid off. Maybe the environment was unpredictable. Maybe the relationships were inconsistent. Maybe the stakes of getting it wrong were genuinely high in a way that required constant monitoring just to stay okay. The system learned that's what it was built to do. And what it learned was, in conditions like these, worst-case predictions are worth generating. In conditions like these, relaxing your guard costs more than maintaining it. In conditions like these, the disaster you prepared for is the one you survived. That's not a malfunction. That's an adaptation. A very intelligent one. The only problem, is that the map was drawn in a different territory. The conditions that train the system may no longer be the conditions you're living in. The relationships that were unpredictable may have changed. The environments where the worst case reliably came true may be gone. But the system doesn't know that. Because the system doesn't update from understanding, it updates from experience. And if the new experiences haven't been accumulated in a way the system can register, it keeps running the old predictions, loyal to a version of your life that no longer exists. This is why telling yourself the worst-case scenario is unlikely doesn't stop it. The prediction isn't coming from the part of your brain that evaluates probability arguments. It's coming from a system that's running a calibrated model, and a counter-argument isn't the kind of data that updates the model. Cognitive approaches, the thought records, the probability estimations, the what's the evidence for and against exercises, they're not useless. But they're working at a different level than where the predictions are generated. They're talking to the part of the brain that analyzes. The predictions are coming from the part that learned. And those two parts do not share a direct line. That specific kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of doing the cognitive work and watching the brain do it anyway, that's not failure. That's the right tool, reaching the wrong level. So here's what this actually is. Not irrationality, not weakness, not evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with the way your mind works. A prediction engine running a model, calibrated to a threat level that the current territory no longer requires. That's a different thing to be carrying. And it's a much more workable one. If this is the level of explanation that actually reaches something for you, mechanism over metaphor, real over reassuring, there's a full field guide in the description. It goes through the mechanics of high-functioning anxiety the way this video does, across every part of the experience that doesn't usually get named this precisely. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. So what do you actually do with this? Because that's the part this audience always gets to. Understanding the mechanism, yes. What changes on Monday morning when the worst-case scenario starts running? That's the question. Here's what doesn't change. The predictions will still generate. That's not the goal. Stopping the predictions. The system doesn't turn off because you understand it. It turns off when it has accumulated enough new data to update the model. And that takes time. And it takes a specific kind of experience. But here's what does change. Immediately. And it matters. The relationship between you and the prediction changes. When the worst-case scenario starts running, there are two very different things you can be doing. You can be arguing with it, treating it as a wrong claim that needs to be disproven, which is exhausting and doesn't reach the calibration. Or you can be noticing it, recognizing it as a prediction the system generated based on a model built from specific experiences, and asking a different question. Not, is this true, but what does this prediction think is still true about my situation? That's not a thought record. It's not a reframe. It's a genuine question to a system that is trying, in its own outdated way, to protect you. And the reason it's different is this. Arguing with the prediction treats the system as an enemy. Getting curious about it treats the system as a source of information about what it still believes is dangerous. One of those conversations helps the system update. The other one doesn't. The one concrete thing. Not a practice, not a habit, just one thing you can do the next time the worst-case scenario starts. Notice it before you argue with it. Name what it's predicting specifically, and ask, even approximately, what does this prediction think is still true? You don't need an answer. You don't need to solve the calibration tonight. The noticing itself is different work than the arguing. And different work reaches a different level. Research on how the nervous system updates its threat predictions consistently points toward the same category of experience. New data delivered in conditions the system registers as safe, not argument, Experience, not insight. Accumulation, that's slower than you want it to be. It's less linear than the kind of progress you're used to making in other areas. But it is actually how the system learns. And you are not working against the system anymore, you're working with it. If this is the kind of explanation that opens something for you, there's more of it in the description. A full field guide to the mechanics of how this experience actually works, built for people who need to understand before they can trust. Link is in the description and the pinned comment. When the worst-case scenario starts running for you, what does it almost always predict? Relationships, performance, health, the future. Which corner does it go to first? So here's what this actually was. Not a sign that your mind is your enemy. Not evidence that you're wired wrong or too sensitive or constitutionally unable to handle uncertainty the way other people seem to. A prediction engine doing its job, running a model that was calibrated in circumstances that required it and that hasn't yet received enough new data to know those circumstances are over. The question, why do I always go there, has a real answer now. You go there because your threat detection system learned in a specific context at a specific time that going there was the right move. That learning was probably correct. Once. The system was protecting something real. It was doing exactly what a well-designed system should do. It just hasn't been told yet that the territory changed. And the job, the actual work, the one that reaches the right level, is not to fight the system. Not to convince it that the worst-case scenario is statistically unlikely. Not to override it with enough willpower that the predictions stop coming. It's to give it new data. Slowly, in conditions it can register. Experience by experience. That's different work than what most people have been doing. It's less combative, it's more patient, and it is genuinely available to you, not because you finally found the right technique, but because you're working with the actual mechanism now instead of arguing with the output. The map your nervous system is using was drawn in a different place. The territory has changed. The map catches up through experience, not through argument, not through insight alone, but it does catch up. That's not a character flaw, that's a nervous system pattern. And patterns, unlike character, can learn. Anyone who's been in this, the predictions will come again, probably today. But the next time they do, you'll know what they actually are. And knowing what something actually is the beginning of a different relationship with it.